All right, legends, welcome back to the channel. We're going to be talking through all the guns that you'd probably want in your squad coming into round 13 and do a little bit of a ranking system. And there's a few guys that are in my side that you probably want to think about here. And we'll start there with Papali, and I think he's probably one of the more important ones. He's lost a bit of cash now. He's up over 830k there for a little bit. Down to 755 is a bit more of a manageable price. And I kind of predicted that he wouldn't be able to keep at that forever. He's not someone that's naturally been a 60+ point scorer, and I'm expecting more scores around this mid-50s area to justify that price of 755. He probably will end up around the 710 mark, but you can cop a few scores slightly under that 55 to get him somewhere there. And I think based on the mid/edges that we have out there, and his dual position status is going to be really important for for anyone's side at this stage. So he's going to be really good. Obviously, Brayley and Watson are good ones to have in your squad, and most people should still have them. So I wouldn't be picking them up now if you haven't got them. But Lucy Leilua is another one that's probably a decent option if he gets off his charge. So he's actually going to be fighting his charge tonight at the judiciary. So we'll see how that pans out, and if he gets off or not. That would be ideal if he does, but if he doesn't, then obviously don't pick him up. If he does, then he could be a really good option at 646, so another 100k cheaper than Isaiah. Just in that edge position, obviously, but he's obviously a big score this week after a lower score the week before. So that's that with him. He's a decent one. Fogs is also a decent one there. Did get 30 on the weekend, but was trekking for a 40 odd in a really beaten side. So this week they come up against the Melbourne team, but a little bit undermanned, obviously, with missing a few forwards. And also all their spine just getting held together by Smithy and Hines at the moment, who are still doing a great job. But Fogs is going to be a great option. He's going to be a keeper for the year. You can see his previous scores there, hitting a lot of high 60s, which is really strong. And you can't be complaining with that if you're owning him. Obviously, he does have the odd 30 in him, but if you look at those scores, when they get beat, he doesn't seem to score as perfectly, but when you've got 65, 62, 69, and 67 in his last six, four of his last six there, you're really happy with those types of scores. So for Jamal there, he's a really good option for your team at that nice cheaper price of 666 as well. Opacek I probably wouldn't be thinking about at this stage. I'd have guys like Jack Bird over him. Nico Hines, if you don't have him, is 676k now, which is incredible. And I don't think he's worth bringing in right now. I think he's going to score really well this week again, but I don't see him as being worth it going into this week. Just too pricey when he's probably going to end up on the bench fairly soon, like within the next few weeks. Obviously, Munster, Harry Grant, Pap are going to be back in the next couple of weeks, but they might give them an extra week's rest, just given the fact of how bad their injuries are. And if they're trying to play Origin, they'll be pretty cooked after that, I imagine. Laurie, I wouldn't pick him up if you don't have him, but there's that. Dewey in the centres, I probably would be hesitant to bring him in if he's still playing centre. If he moves back to 6, I think he's a really good option, but until then, I probably would be holding off. Madison becomes a really interesting option, even cheaper than he was. He's going to keep going down over the next few weeks, but he's someone that you could try to lock in for the rest of the year. I'm a little bit worried in terms of his scores at the moment, as he's only had a few games close to that 60 mark. And that one that made us all bring him into our side that made him look really, really good. So there's that there. But we'll move to the guys that aren't in my side at the moment, and that starts with Jerome Hughes. And I think he's a really, really good option. Just the issue is that he's 814k, and he's obviously going to continue to play extremely well for him to keep that. Otherwise, he's going to end up being closer to a 700k player, is my guess. I think he's going to average around 54, 55 over the whole season. Obviously, like from here on, I should say, which might drop his average down to like 56, 57. But that's still going to be really good, right? Any half that you can have in your team that's going to be averaging in the mid-50s, other than someone like Cleary, is going to be a good option for your side. It's just if you want to pay that now, or you need the extra player in your team in round 13. So in our next video, we'll talk about the trades that, the trades, but the amount of players / the score you'd be looking for in round 13, and then moving ahead to round 17, for example. But in this one here, let's just focus on, if you're going to trade this week and you need players in your side, these are the kind of guys you want to be looking at. So Hughes is out as our most expensive. Then we move down the list, and you've got all these guys that are question marks here. Frizz, Haas, they're going to be either injured or in Origins. Just think of those guys that they're definitely not going to be playing at this stage. Fisher Harris becomes a pretty solid option. I think he's going to be averaging exactly what he's averaging right now at 54. So not underpriced. You're just getting him exactly for what he's worth. And I think you can have him as a keeper in your mids for the rest of the year. If with the way things are going at the moment, with a lot of guys scoring under their what they're priced at or should be priced at in Taumalolo, you've got these types of guys, then someone consistent like Fisher Harris could be really, really good for your side going forward. We'll see Dylan Brown come back to the team, and I still think Moses is going to be a better option than Dylan Brown, but he is an option if you like him. Obviously, he had 3 weeks out with a suspension, so he'll be ripping and ready to go. Who else we got? We got Panga Junior. Again, him and Moses here, I think, are going to average pretty similar to where they're at the moment. Moses has more of a chance to average closer to 60, I think. So Panga didn't make the Origin team. A middle and an edge, very similar to that of Papali, where you can get someone that's 80k cheaper and should average fairly similar. I'm probably more confident that Papali can average 55 rather than what Panga can keep doing. But if he does manage to continue playing 80 minutes, I don't see why not, or why he can't continue to score mid-50s. It's just, the sheer amount of time that he's on the park is going to be beneficial for him for all the things that he can do. But yeah, I'd still be worried about him being a suspension risk for sure, which he hasn't had any issues yet, which is interesting. We spoke about Moses. Brandon Smith, a decent option again, but won't be as potent when guys like Grant come back and the rest of the game, because he won't have to do as much and he'll play a little bit more through the middle forward rotation. And he shouldn't be averaging 53 from then. Remember, he's got 5 tries this the last 2 weeks as well, which is not going to be not going to be very normal for him going forward. Let's talk about Benny Hunt. So his scores have been pretty interesting over the last little period. He's been up and down, very, very much so up and down. Started amazingly, 71, 80, and 80 in the first 2 games, and then obviously got injured at the back end of that, or halfway through that 3rd game. And so he comes back in round 8 and picks up an 18. So he's gone, first game back, we'll give that to him. A lot of missed tackles, 64, 37, 69, and 79. So getting back to where he started the year, which is really good. So that he's someone that becomes a really interesting option. He's only bad one against the Storm there. So if you're looking from here on in, obviously not going to play the Storm every week. These are the types of scores you'll be expecting. Him to get a fair few kick meters, obviously running the ball a lot. So when he runs the ball heaps, he's going to be doing well for a starter. And is obviously a good defender, apart from the random few 5, 6, 11 tackle games, which is strange because it's funny what happens when you get pushed to the edge. Like if he's playing in the middle, he'll make 50 tackles and miss like 2 or 3. As soon as you get exposed a little bit on the edge, you start missing a few, or you hang off a few tackles. So Benny Hunt with a dual position there, a 669 hooker and half, is really, really cool because he's priced at a bit under 50 average, where he's going to be averaging 55. So I think you get a keeper in the halves and the hooker at a cheaper price, and it's really all there is to say. If you like him, then you get him at a cheaper price for and a keeper level player. So really cool there. Mane looks like he should be like an 18th man, which means he won't get to play this week. I think you got to hold him if you have him, but if you don't, you just steer clear of him at this stage. Luke Brooks, I wouldn't be targeting. He is playing a lot better at the moment, but there's every chance that Dewey goes back to 6 at some point in the year and takes a little bit of the limelight off Brooks. Obviously, right now with Mbai in 6, Brooks is doing the majority of the kick meters and controlling the team. So I just think there's a worry there that could happen at any time. McCulloch there with 56 average. It's good to see him come back after playing a couple of 68, 67 minute games. Moves back into an 80-minute role, partly to do with the fact that Maguire's not playing in the 13 role and can spell him. So I don't know if that was just a phase or if they were just trialing that, or not exactly sure what the theory was there. But over the next few weeks, he won't have any issues playing 80 minutes. You just kind of got to worry if that changes back and he ends up getting that 67, 68 minutes. And if he does, then he's not going to be worth having in your squad, because he's going to drop a bit in price. He's going to average probably just under 50, you'd imagine. But before that, he was a 60-point average player and priced at 653. If you need a second hooker, Brayley and a McCulloch, for example, which a lot of us don't have cover apart from Watson, for example, then I think McCulloch is a really good option for your team this week, especially. So To'o and Fodawaka are in the Origin squads, unfortunately, and both are holds if you have them. Gutho, I don't think it's an amazing option, but Could if you needed to. I think we all have a lot of wing fullbacks at the moment, so that's that. Coruscant would have been great, but he's going to be in the 18th man jersey and won't be able to play for his club. Just remember that, guys. If they're 18th man, they can't play. If they're 19th man, I believe they can go back and play club footy this week. Adokar's going to be out. Norman is an interesting one, averaging 50. I just don't think he's a keeper, but he's fairly cheap. If you've got a lot of trades, then you can bring him in and should do well over the next period and then move in 17, but I just don't think he's a solid option. Capewell's there. Barnett should have a bigger role over the next bunch of weeks with Frizzell out. You'd imagine he moves into the edge position for Frizz, and they probably play Watson at 13. Something they can do there. Barnett will get big minutes again and score better. The odd kicks a goal when Pong is out. I think Barnett will be solid, and you get him at 591. My issue is when Frizzell comes back, he moves back to this 40, 50 odd minute games and goes back to this price point. Remember, he was up in the 700s for a bit there, so he's lost a fair bit in value, and that's that there. Moving down to lower average players, we've got Twal there. I just don't think he's an amazing option. I'm not sure if he's a total level keeper, averaging 49.8. I don't see much changing. So if you bring him in, I think you're going to have to move him out later, or he ends up being like an 18th or 19th man for your squad. Peachy's a keeper in the centres. He's had a few weeks off, so he'll be pretty fresh, which will be good for him. If you have him, keep holding on. If you don't have him, he could be an option if you need some centre cover. If you want to have a third centre, like I'm thinking this week of maybe going Starling to Jack Bird, you could do that to Peachy, for example. I don't have enough money for that. So that's that there. And yeah, moving on to someone like Bird, which we'll see in a second. None of these guys I'm scrolling through are options at this stage. We've got Stephen Cryden, who didn't make the Origin squad, which is interesting. So, it works out well if you've got him, or, he's someone that you could have as centre or wing fullback cover as well. I just don't see him being as an ultimate keeper, even though he had an amazing game on the weekend. You imagine Dylan Edwards comes back this week or next week and then, stuffs him around. Momorowski will be interesting to see if he moves into like after this week when everyone's back, if he moves into like an 18th man role again. That'll be interesting there. Remus Smith keep holding, and then it'll be Mr. Bird is the only really one I want to talk about left, who is averaging really solidly in that mid 40s, 50 kind of range, which is really solid for any centre at 508k. I think you can move him into your squad and be comfortable in his scoring week to week. I think he's been the Dragons' best player for the majority of this year, and they need him to keep doing his thing to dominate and help the Dragons come back from their really good start to the year, and have really dropped off a little bit over the last bunch of weeks. But yeah, it'd be cool to see him dominating for your side and for the Dragons. I think he's a really good option in the centres, and for me that's running with only the two centres and could lose one at any point, I think it's probably a decent one this week to go straight swap for a Starling, or you could do someone like Burton, who we know what happens when he plays in the 7 role. He scores really big. So does he go back to the centres after that and keep scoring well? Yeah, I think when they dominate, he's going to keep scoring well. So it's an interesting one at 505k, dual position for half and centre. He wouldn't be able to place in anyone's side, but he has had a couple of low games when he's not scoring tries. But the good thing is, for the Panthers, he keeps scoring tries. So we'll leave it at that one, guys, for this video. All the kind of guys that you should be looking at targeting this week. And we'll move into our next video will be obviously around the team list, but then following that, we'll work out how many players most teams have. But the most important thing is going to be the types of players you have. Do you have a bunch of guns this week that are going to score you well? There's no point having 12 players playing, but you got 4 of them that are 20 to 30 point players, where you could have 10 players and most of them being guns, and you could probably score better than the teams with 12 or 13. So keep that in mind when you're selecting your teams this week. But we've got plenty of videos for the week. I hope you enjoy all of them. Please hit like and subscribe if you do, and we'll catch you in the next one, team. Bye-bye.